Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Kyle, or What's the Deets? Welcome to our town hall today. Today, we've got a pretty brief agenda where we'll spend most of the time discussing the vision for KeeperDAO document that was posted earlier this week. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. The original kind of topic for this call was going to be talking about the CVX position and voting strategies on that. We're now going to be pushing that to tomorrow's governance town hall, which is exactly 24 hours from right now. So if you'd like to, talk CVX and about the KIP that we'll be posting later today on creating some CVX position manager positions. Feel free to take a look at that once that's posted and join us tomorrow at noon. Well, noon Pacific time at 8 p.m. UTC. But without kind of dancing around the subject too more, I'd love to just hop right on into the bulk of today's call, which is going to be talking about our vision for the future. A quick high level overview of the document. We'll have Hazard kind of present on that for a little bit. We'll take some questions from the community and we'll look at some next steps. So Hazard, why don't you hop off mute and give us a quick intro on the vision document?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And actually, I see Jay-Z's on the call, so maybe we can pull him up here too if he's not just lurking.
I sent him an invite too.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I would imagine that most people here have read the document that was published, sort of laying out, a little bit of our thinking about where we see the potential to take the project and kind of take the technology once it's ready to be sort of fully unleashed, I suppose. So there's a lot of parts to our project. Most people know that if they've been around for long enough. We sort of have all these different pieces: the hiding game, hiding vaults, the coordination game, our keepers and market makers, and sort of hard to maybe sometimes see how it all fits together, or whether it actually all fits together, whether we sort of have a plan. So part of the purpose of this document was to stitch things together, maybe into kind of a concept, like a single concept, kind of see all of these different pieces as things that are kind of supporting one sort of big idea. And we thought it was important to maybe take a moment to do that at this stage of development, where we are with coordination and the rest of our stack, because we're hoping to begin moving into an era where bringing on more people, sort of staffing up, scaling, growing, and reaching out, across the industry is going to be very important. And that's a process that we want and we need the DAO to be a part of and to be along for the ride with. And so it's important when we're making decisions about stuff like this, or kind of thinking about strategy and thinking about, progress in the project, that everybody kind of has a shared vision, right? Or a shared concept for what we're here to do. And I think, part of this document is outlining that for everybody, and this concept of maybe the execution layer, right? So like a single abstract layer that can allow, anybody, so users, but also market makers or protocols, or, just institutional traders, to execute their transactions, complex transactions, in a way that doesn't really care about which blockchain it's on or how it's settled, whether it's settled through Flashbots or settled through the mempool or mining DAO, or Eden or whether it goes through some layer 2 solution or anything. It doesn't really matter to the user. So that's all kind of hidden from them. And at the same time, to protect them from forms of MEV that are harmful in the wild, to prevent them from needing to pay fees or gas in order for their transactions to happen, preventing all sorts of things, all sorts of sort of hidden costs that come with execution today in DeFi, on the blockchain. And actually to turn that around and to start essentially paying users, so the originators of orders, transactions, sort of the fair value of that, of those transactions. And by that we don't mean sort of we want to, you get what you ordered. Like, yes, obviously you should receive the number of units that you ordered. That's the baseline, right? But sort of in addition to that, there's sort of a surplus value to your transaction that can be used by keepers to kind of create even more value. Maybe that's arbitrage, maybe that's other things, but that surplus value that folks like Citadel in traditional finance sort of run on, right? They run on that surplus value. We can sort of also discover and also create that surplus value, and then maybe we can redistribute that, though, unlike Citadel, in a way that's more optimal to each of the market participants, allowing us to kind of create markets that look different than the ones that we have today in DeFi, maybe create the kind of markets that in some cases may be as good as or better than these highly liquid markets that you'd find in traditional finance, because of the incentives that we can bring and because of the way that we can balance and optimize all of this surplus value. Obviously, along with that, we've got a lot to talk about in terms of how we get there and reorganization. But see, Jay-Z's up here now. Maybe he can give his perspective on this, and then we can maybe dive into the nitty-gritty about why a reorg, why now, and what it looks like, maybe.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Yeah, that was a good high-level overview. And I think this is really a big part of how we grow and how we progress to the next phase. So KeeperDAO, our vision and what we've been building and what we would like to build, it's far from simple, right? So this isn't like a sushi scenario where you're just kind of forking a thing and you throw up a UI and that's that, and maybe you hire a few people and launch a DAO. There's a lot more to it, and these plans and these visions, leadership structure and everything really is all going to help us grow, and this is something that we need to transition into the next phase. And who knows, maybe even people on this call right now, who aren't on the team today, could be a part of that in the future. And so I think it's important to get the community involved, whether you're just kind of casually involved in something. Maybe you're involved in a KIP, or maybe you're working as a contractor, or maybe you're just kind of chatting about an idea today. It's good to get people involved, because this is how we grow and how we mature. And even if you're just reading these vision docs today, if you kind of feel if you feel attached to something, definitely reach out and see what direction that idea may go in, because we've definitely heard some of these thoughts and ideas from folks around the community, and they may kind of view our vision and kind of find themselves a part of some idea or some part of this vision. So this is a great way to kind of grow the team and grow our ideas and keep working towards the future, and make sure that we build great products and a great ecosystem for everyone, whether you're a user, a founder, a keeper, a market maker, or you're just staking some tokens on something somewhere. So I guess now's probably a good time to dive in, and Hassett, if you want to take it away and,
Sure.
and lead that.
Yeah, so just to kind of level set real quick. So as mentioned in the announcement, so this isn't something we've gone wide with. We haven't sort of tweeted about this a lot. We haven't put it on our blog. The main reason for that is because we know that, this has been a long development cycle, right? And like Joey mentioned, it's not a simple it's not a simple protocol in the same way something like sushi is, right? So it's, it is the case that this is sort of an open invitation for discussion. This isn't something that we've thought a lot about this, obviously. We do feel strongly that this is a good direction, but it's not the case that everything's filled out here, right? And we did leave room for sort of gaps and improvements that we would like to see, and comments and feedback that we'd like to have. And so I just want everybody to view this not less as sort of like us telling everybody what we think is good. I mean, that is what it is, but it doesn't mean that that's what we have to do. This is sort of an open discussion. And then, so after, we have this town hall, after we chat about it and we get some comments, some feedback and stuff, there'll probably be sort of a more finalized looking KIP for this on the forum. And we'll probably, try to make the wider crypto community more aware, through tweeting that, and then diving in through that, and then taking it through our normal governance process. So maybe kind of think of this, as glossy as it looks, kind of think of it as sort of an RFC process, so sort of a request for comments. And we really wanted to talk mostly to really the dedicated people in the Discord who have been here for a while and who've been around and who would, see our announcement, because we know it's been a long time. So with that, I guess we can just talk into the second part, so sort of scaling part. Then I sort of want to open it up to the town hall, open it up for questions and stuff like that. So the basics of scaling here, we did a lot of thinking about because we've wanted to add contributors. There's a lot we want to do, and there's a lot to capture out there. And it's hard. It's hard, right? Because when you bring somebody on, they need to be trained. They have a lot of questions. There's a lot of additional decisions and stuff. And when you don't have a great structure, it's sort of, each new contributor sort of adds a little bit of drag for a while before they kind of help, they start, adding a lot of value that can happen. And also, depending on how you arrange things between the DAO and, sort of like who hires, who are we hiring? Who makes the decisions? How do you pay them? Who makes the decisions about that? What is their mission? What are they here to do? How do we measure their performance? Or how do we know that they're working for us or in service of our mission and stuff? So all of that are things we kind of haven't done we haven't put a lot of effort towards defining, because we sort of had the structure that we had. But making that larger now that we have governance and sort of going bigger, we kind of need to take this look and to have a think about, how we should do this. And so the way this is sort of laid out is to kind of think of it, as maybe like a sort of like a, we have the network, right? We've got KeeperDAO, we have our products and stuff, and it's sort of like this network that's creating value. So token holders, the DAO and everything. And we can, have these contributors who, maybe we collectively decide, their skills, their expertise, their time, their effort, their energy would be value enhancing. It's a good thing that we have Joey, right, and Ninja, and all of these protocol developers, and Watts making these graphics, and Dietz leading these calls and stuff. That's a good thing for our network. And so it makes sense for us to kind of charter contributors and have them sort of help grow the network and grow the value and the collective value. But then sort of how do we structure that is a different question. And an interesting thing about Teal and about some of these other initiatives that are out there, such as Orca DAO and even Urine Governance V2, is that it kind of allows sort of teams to form, but teams that aren't really rolling up into some middle management layer, where there's a director and then they report to a executive director who reports to a VP who reports, there's none of that. It's just sort of you have a team. They could be their own team. They could almost be their own protocol, right? But they build their own expertise. They have a budget. They have a lot of authority to kind of build the team in the right way that they see fit. They're an expert in their domain, and they have a mission, and the mission's very clear. It's very important that it be very clear cut so that they can all understand, and that we can all, everybody in the DAO can understand sort of what they're here to do, and kind of make some oversight to say like, yeah, they are doing that, and so that they can really build their expertise to be razor sharp and be the best at what they do. So as we identify each of these things that we know is going to feed value into the network, we can kind of put an anchor in place, like a lead for that team, somebody to be responsible for them, then kind of assign them a budget based on the business needs, and then let that team kind of grow and start doing its work. And we can use a similar process to this to kind of scale out many different teams, because there's many different areas we'd like to work in, and we'd like to bring talent in to work on. And it's essentially just a matter of how do we as a DAO decide to do that. So this kind of gives a simple, repeatable way for us to do that, and in a way for there to be continuing oversight in the form of, accountability in the sense that there are leads, particular people who have been, designated as sort of the responsible one in some way, and then also sort of regular reviews, quarterly or however, whatever the period we decide is, so that the DAO can understand. And it's not just a review to say, here's what we've shipped, aren't we great? But encoded in the mission of this team, right, would be things like metrics, like why, what are we here to do? Maybe we're here to increase volume by this much. Maybe that's not a target, but we're here to increase volume. So during this review, we need to be hearing about, did they increase volume? Or maybe they're here to ship a particular kind of product, and they may discover their own KPIs for that product, and then we can look at that. So the review and the mission and the team, it's all about building sort of an interactive unit, kind of has its own goals and life and desires, that those are all measurable and sort of helping us be accountable as a DAO for that. Make sure that that's all kind of feeding back into this overall goal of growing the network, growing the value for everybody. And the nice thing about this is that if you get the right person as a lead for one of these teams, there's not a whole lot you need to really help them do. Like imagine if there was like 5 different protocols out there. They each had their own structure that they were working on, and they all knew what they were doing. Like they were providing a particular primitive, and then you just kind of put them all under the same roof. Like, do you really need to change a whole lot if all of those primitives kind of feed into the same goal? Maybe you don't really need to change that much, right? Like with the right people in the lead, if they have a well-defined purpose and they know what they're doing, there's not the need for a whole lot of, hand-holding and stuff across verticals. So there's going to be some things that maybe cut across verticals, so operations and stuff like that. But for many of the core kind of technical components, you can imagine perhaps these teams sort of autonomous with a high level of autonomy and delegation, kind of acting independently, and that's very appealing to A players. We want people who want to sort of build these kinds of things. They like autonomy. They know what they're doing, and they know who will help them do that. So the goal for us in terms of this would really be to just build an overall culture to make sure that we're all kind of behaving, in a way that's all compatible with our ethos and our goals, and then to build these really atomic kind of teams that roll up into value that we want to generate for the whole network. So I talked a lot. I'm tired of talking, so maybe we can do questions. That's much more fun.
Yeah, that sounds good, Hazard, and thanks for the awesome overview between you and Jay-Z. So why don't, if you've got some questions for these guys, why don't you go on ahead and raise your hand, and we'll call you on up. I think that something for me would be maybe just to quickly touch on timeline. How soon do we want to get this going?
For me, I mean, this is something I would put this as high priority. Obviously, I mean, in the sense that there's a lot of moving parts here, but yeah, getting to consensus on this maybe is a big task. It's a medium-sized task, right? But I don't have a number in terms of like, it should be a month or 2 months or something. It should be soon. I think it should be soon, because I think this will really let us, open the throttle a little bit. We've got a lot of resources in this DAO, which is one of our really great strengths. I mean, that's something that puts us really in the top flight. Okay. And we have a lot of great technology. It's, it's getting to the point where, we're looking to turn the corner on making a lot of this live. And at that point, opening that throttle is going to be really helpful. So yeah, getting there.
Yeah, I'd say we have some fundamental pillars in place to help us transition towards this. For example, looking at the graphic, in the section that shows the various teams, we probably have, some, early stages of several of these teams already. And, today, it's at a much smaller scale, right? But so there may be, folks, if you look at the treasury section, for example, there may be folks on this call right now who are, very interested and active in that. And so that's kind of like the very early stages of that. And so we just need to kind of take some steps to formalize that. And, same thing with multi-chain. We've had a lot of conversations about it, but, we kind of need to take some more steps to formalize that and, just start scaling it forward. So there's probably a lot more logistics and overhead involved in kind of formalizing this. But the good news is I think we can kind of at least set the foundation early and then transition towards it. It's definitely not something that would happen overnight, but we can kind of start developing that plan and maybe even make this some sort of a visual thing that we can interact with even on our webpage, which would be kind of cool. That way you can kind of see the teams, and if you need to get in touch with somebody, and this may be like an internal thing, could even be an external thing, maybe a little bit of both as well. So if you want to, if say another DeFi product wants to get in touch with us, they could kind of see, okay, which team do I want to talk to? Oh, I want to talk to the protocol team, and then they kind of can get to us that way. Interesting way to think about that.
Yeah, great point.
I mean, just to comment real quickly on like the really basic timeline. So I did post a KIP draft. It's very drafty. So in the forum, which kind of captures most of the main skeleton of the organizational part. And then there's process pieces of that are going to be filled out probably over the next week. And then, once that's looking good, once we've got some feedback and comments and stuff, I think we'll probably look to kind of attract more conversation from the wider community, by which I mean, putting this on Twitter and, making it known that it's out here and that we're really thinking about doing this, provided everybody here feels, good about it and has been making comments and stuff. And then, from there, it'll go through the normal ratification process like any other KIP. And then at that point, we'll start, working in earnest through these processes, like actually enacting them and doing them and, living this.
Awesome. All right, guys. Hey, don't be shy. Why don't you, if you've got a question for either of these guys about this, go on ahead, raise your hand. We'll call you up on stage. We know you've got some questions, folks. Come on now. All right. Looks like Eddie, I'm going to call you up first. Go on ahead and unmute, Eddie.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I was just curious. Yeah, great to see the update and all the enthusiasm, and I think it's great. I'm just curious, how does the reorganization possibly impact the launch of the coordination game?
Yeah, great question. I would say it doesn't impact the launch at all. I guess in a perfect world, maybe we could have potentially done this earlier, but then it might have impacted it. But I'd say it really doesn't. The reorganization is something that we've been kind of talking about for a little while, and it's definitely not going to be like an all hands on deck reorg. It's not going to change the way most of us work on a day-to-day basis, and it's not going to be something to where we need to take all of the engineers working in the coordination game and have them stop and do something else. So it really won't. So if you kind of look at the various teams, the coordination game definitely involves protocol, product, integrations. But what's nice is all of those things have already kind of shipped to a large degree, and so us working on this, or a fraction of our team working on this, doesn't slow or impact the coordination game at all.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. Hey, there we go. Here's our next question. Go on ahead and unmute.
Hi guys. Big fan of the project. Thank you for taking the time today. I'm just kind of curious with the roadmap that you guys have laid out. What do you guys think are some of the major obstacles, or the things that need to be overcome besides just development time, or maybe resources or bodies that need to be put into these roles? What are some of the challenges ahead?
In terms of the reorganization, or in terms of sort of the vision, do you mean?
I'd say the grander vision, not so much the reorganization. I think the organization was laid out pretty clearly.
Yeah, I don't know, Jay-Z, you wanna take that?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of different ways to look at challenges. You know, I guess there's challenges from a technical perspective. There's always challenges with growing a team. Building things while growing a team. I think it's important to not grow too fast, but also grow. That way, you're kind of accelerating your future potential. So that's kind of like a challenge that I wouldn't say that's a huge challenge, but it's definitely there. But then I think there's also challenges for cross blockchain, and challenges for, say, Ethereum evolving, say ETH2, proof of stake, that sort of a thing. So there's definitely some technical challenges. But what's interesting is I don't want to say those things work themselves out, but to some degree, the way the coordination game is set up, it's nice because those challenges don't all fall on our team necessarily, right? Because if you look at the coordination game, for example, it involves onboarding market makers and keepers who are kind of doing their own trading operation, and so other keepers can kind of solve those MEV challenges for us, and we don't even necessarily have to. Now, obviously, we have our own keeper bot as well, so we'll be working on those as well. But it's nice because if say we don't have the most efficient MEV capturing mechanism after proof of stake launches, other keepers can, and as long as they're in our ecosystem, that's fine, right? And then there's other ways to view challenges too. It could be maybe an economic challenge, like for example, how do we increase volume, or how do we capture users, and how do we attract market makers? Those are challenges that we're working through, and I think those are always going to be there. And one of the interesting examples would be just kind of looking at some of the popular dexes over the course of history. Just because you're popular 1 month or 1 year does not mean you're going to be popular the next year, because things evolve and they grow. And so, even if we become massively popular next year, that doesn't guarantee us anything for the year following, right? So it's kind of this cat and mouse game. You have to evolve well, and that's something that we're focused on, is making sure that the coordination game can scale and evolve. And part of it's honestly it's nature, and its foundation is to rely on a network of others. That way, our bot doesn't always have to be the best. This one market maker doesn't always have to be the best. It onboards everyone into the same ecosystem, and kind of lets people kind of evolve and find their own efficient points. But yeah, that was a great question. Did you have any specific challenges in mind when you asked that question?
I think just looking at the roadmap, because as you all kind of mentioned, there are so many objectives before us, and I would imagine one of the challenges would be prioritizing and figuring out, with the resources available, what would be the most beneficial objectives to accomplish that that benefit the DAO, right? Maybe it's creating revenue for the DAO, maybe it's creating opportunity for more players or keepers to get involved into the DAO, and opportunities for keepers. There's, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you guys are thinking about, and maybe just understanding the priority structure and what's currently on the docket, and how that benefits everyone would be great to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Prioritizing is always a challenge for sure, and you have to adapt as things occur in real time, right? So our priorities, this month may look different than a few months from now, even if the same things are on the board, just kind of shifting around. It's definitely so. Right now, the biggest priority is to get the coordination game out and get the community involved in that, and reveal that information, kind of have everyone kind of take it in and analyze it and get people using it, get the keepers and market makers on board, and after that, the priorities are a little bit flexible, and kind of like, so it's kind of like, if you're going shopping for something, maybe you have an idea of what you want, but when you get there, and you see it up close, you're gonna be like, okay, yes, I have to get that, or I had an idea about this, but it's not quite ripe yet, so I'm gonna wait. So we have a few things in mind, and we want to go in a couple different directions, but it's one of those things where you kind of have to strike while the iron's hot sometimes. And right now, we have a heavy focus on the coordination game, and a lot of ways to grow that and grow the economics there, and then a lot of plans with the treasury, but really it's kind of a little bit flexible, and it's not something that you can necessarily pin down every priority for all of the next 2 years, because in this space everything changes so quickly, and something that happens 6 months into next year could dramatically change everything that happens for the remainder of the year. So you have to be, to some degree, short-sighted with your priorities, while at the same time kind of preparing for anything. It's interesting.
That certainly gives a good framework. Not to like hog the stage or anything, but thank you for your time.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions?
Maybe this one was addressed a long time ago, and I haven't really been all that present. But originally, I thought in the KeeperDAO structure of leadership or whatever that I guess the Tai Yang was involved at some point. Is he still kind of involved, or is he? Because I think he was moving forward with some kind of something with Solana and with the Ren protocol, but I just wasn't quite sure if he's involved or has a presence. Or
Yeah, so Ty is in an advisor's role. He's not actively working on a day-to-day basis. So we communicate with him for advice, to talk about anything related to token economics, DAOs, that sort of thing, business especially. He's definitely big on business. So he's in an advisory role. So you probably won't see him in too many town hall calls, but he definitely may make an appearance from time to time.
Awesome. Hey, I just saw a question come in via the text chat from Wes. It looks like it says, were any other models explored besides the Teal organization, and how did we end up settling on using that style? Hazard, I think this is a great question for you.
Great question, and that's something that's not in the document, and what I'm going to try to add to the KIP on the forum is like what else did we think about, and then I mean, there's a lot of ways, and I think this is a big discussion happening right now in the industry in general. It's like, okay, if a DAO is a club, it's pretty easy to not really have any, no bosses, no masters. Then when you need to actually do a lot of complex work that's needs to be sequenced and coordinated and stuff, it's like, well, okay, that maybe doesn't work out as well. So there's a lot of ways that you see this. One approach is kind of the bag on the side of the DAO, which is the Uniswap Labs kind of thing, where it's yeah, you have a company and there's a DAO, but the company is most of the contributorship, and then the company just does its thing, and it's one big if you subscribe to the idea that a company is a person, then it's one really big, strangely competent member of the DAO that just does a bunch of work for the network, right? So I guess that's one way to look at it. I think in our there's other models about how to do this. I think one of them, again, Orca DAO is just like that you can spin up teams kind of completely autonomously. So like anybody who wants can kind of show up and say, I'm going to make a team. It's going to look like this, and we're going to do this. And I think that's interesting, and maybe something that we could move towards. The teal concept is less about like how you spin up teams as much as it's about sort of how those teams are related together inside of the organization. And teal as a concept was something, so I was sort of teal pilled by Tracheopteryx from Yearn, who kind of like forced me to read the book, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. So that's what he's been working on at Yearn and bringing to a lot of other folks as well. And it's really sort of about building sort of an internal culture based on not just delegation, but kind of this independence and sort of it just really appeals to a lot of the people, the kind of people that we like to work with, who are really, like I said, sort of A players. Like they like being able to, kind of guide their own work and sort of build their own things. And it really appeals, I think, to a lot of our senses of the problems with sort of typical corporate hierarchy. And what it also does is it really allows there to be a space for the DAO to continue in a role that isn't just kind of looking on at everything happening with the contributorship. Like they really play an important role, sort of an oversight role, maybe sometimes an adversarial role, to kind of, make sure that missions are clear and that we're, sticking to those missions and making sure that the budgets are allocated properly and stuff, because, the treasury is the DAO treasury, right? It's not the contributors treasury or, the founders treasury or whatever. So yeah, it's important because fueling contributorship is an important use of the treasury. So it's important to have the DAO in the loop. So yeah, I think a lot of combinations of those things kind of led us to kind of pick this up as the model to go forward. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from people, some of our advisors and folks in the industry who have been thinking along similar lines maybe, but haven't gotten it out yet. So I think you'll be seeing more of this style emerge actually as time goes on.
Yeah, when Hazard had and Tommy and Watts and the crew started working on this document, they shared around that kind of Going Teal organization book, which was just a fantastic read. So if anyone is actually interested in learning more about Teal organizations, I'll hop in and I'll grab that link to that book. So it's a very interesting reference piece. Let's see. Do we have any other? Well, thanks, Wes, for the thumbs up. Does anyone else have questions on this? Oh, wait, here we go. We got one. Aiken, I'm calling you up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go on ahead.
Yeah, so the question I have is just trying to thinking through how this new org structure would kind of collaborate or coordinate with DAO oversight and so on. Right. So has there been, I'm sure that's been thought, but what are your thoughts around how this could impact or redefine, for example, the oversight role, and what kinds of structures would need to be put in place to ensure that so funds and the DAO are fulfilling that oversight responsibility, but also have the, I guess, level of information they need, right, in terms of how the organization is operating to do that effectively, right? It's kind of a vague question, but I'm just trying to figure out, what your thoughts are on how you see DAO oversight playing a role as this new organizational structure emerges.
Yeah, totally. It's really interesting. So we have been thinking a lot about that. Today, I think if you look at what the SOFUNs, who is a SOFUN, I myself am one of the sort of what you might call the core team, right, is. And so there's this kind of blend of internal information and sort of community information. And it's interesting because like on the one hand, like SOFUNs are kind of as distinguished, individuals in the DAO. They're kind of, maybe they're able to kind of focus and sort of rally that oversight function. In order to provide that function, they sort of need enough information to do to fulfill that role, right? And maybe they also even need to be sort of compensated, right, for the time and attention and diligence it takes to fulfill that role. So then at what point do they kind of become part of the team that they're trying to oversee? Right? So it's kind of an interesting situation where, like, maybe you could see them, you could maybe hope that they could become something sort of like, so the example that always comes into my mind is like the Congressional Budget Office in the United States, which is basically, you have, I don't know, senators and people in Congress who create budgets. But then there's also this person there, this office of people who exists to just kind of be a non-aligned, like sort of impartial numbers shop to take these budgets and like boil them down and like actually report what their findings are. They're supposed to be sort of a neutral party to perform this function, right? So I don't know if it makes sense to pursue something like that, where it's like, oh, they're going to kind of fact check things, or if there may be more of an adversarial role, where it's sort of like that's their role is adversarial. So there's different models of how to think about that, and that's something that I think is an important part of how we design, this relationship, right, between the DAO. Like, how does DAO oversight actually ensured and provided, and what do we need to put in place for that? Because it would not be like fair to ask, to have a bunch of highly paid contributors doing something over here with oh, well, we have protected information and whatever, versus sort of volunteers in the Discord who just are really interested in this and they're kind of doing it to learn and to participate and to be a part of something. Like, there's kind of an imbalance there, right, of power, and so it's hard to say with a straight face like, oh yeah, there's oversight. So we really do want to have some kind of a focusing force through that, and maybe the SO funds provide that. Maybe that's their role, and maybe sort of the core team needs to kind of get out of the business of being SO funds and stuff. So yeah, there's definitely some evolution of the role of SO fund, I think, that needs to happen, and I would like to have that as part of this discussion with the community to kind of understand, like, where could they provide the most value here, and like, what might that look like and what might need to happen in order for them to be able to provide that value. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of dynamics here. Nothing's catastrophic, I don't think, but it's more like, how can we evolve to kind of accommodate this new situation. Yeah.
Awesome. Aiken, do you have any follow-up to that, or any other question?
Not really. I mean, I guess maybe some comments, but I think, the response kind of then sort of like, you raised some questions, right? And so, which I think are really good questions that we will definitely need to think through around, if the DAO oversight or SO funds become that oversight group, then like, how do we define independence, right, from those in an operating role, right? So that's one question. And how does that potentially change the composition of, right, SO funds, or who can be a SO fund, and some of those questions. I think it also, right, it just seems to me that a lot of, KIPs and proposals will be coming from these teams who are close to the work and who, actually would be, I'm assuming over time, producing more and more proposals that have to go up through to DAO oversight. And so there's some sort of like collaborative role between, at least in that case, right, between SO funds who, play a role in determining or agreeing or, sort of validating those ideas before they go to votes, right? So I think it's just, it's clear to me that a lot of questions we sort of have to noodle through, but it probably starts with, clearly defining, what that role of DAO oversight is going to be, and then from there, answering a host of questions. But yeah, I think so far the response was good, and I think it's just something we just have to discuss further. Thanks.
Yeah. We should set up a special sort of, I don't know, office hours or something to do that, Aiken, because I know that you've been working a lot. Maybe something for the governance workshop. Pick up and sort of work through and figure out the best thing here, because whatever the best thing is, we'll want to do that. Oh, yeah. Thank you for the question. That's really great.
Yeah, guys, these questions have been fantastic. We got some more time, so continue to raise your hand if you got even just comments. If you just want to share your thoughts on the new proposed vision, or if you have more questions, feel free to raise your hand and come on up on stage. Let's hear. Peso, I see you. We'll invite you first.
How's it going, guys? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Fantastic. I feel like a broken record, but I will die on this hill asking about how the coordination game can achieve like a truly like unreplicatable sort of moat around its tech stack. Because I've asked it and I never got a sort of answer that fully scratched my itch. For lack of a better word. Like, for instance, Bancor V3, I was just listening to their AMA a while back, and what they've done is essentially, if someone's able to sort of deploy the Bancor V3 tech on another chain before they can, they're completely okay with that. But what they have to do is actually utilize the BNT token to have it sort of work. Or just as another example, right? I mean, sort of at the dawn of high frequency trading, they were sort of building these fiber optic lines, right? That were sort of, to any sort of outsider, you'd think you were crazy if you were doing that, because it was building like a straight line from like the data center to the server, I think. And you'd have to have all of these like, oh my God, I don't have the word right now in my head. These certifications, I guess, for lack of a better word, to sort of build over all of these different like pieces of land, and you'd be going over like private property and things like that. And it was like almost an impossible task from the outside. But if it's worth doing and it's sort of financially rewarding to do, people are going to be trying to do it, right? And in the document, you guys said that you were going to sort of deploy some strategies if people were going to sort of try to bite your drip on that. So I was just curious to sort of know what kind of strategies you guys have sort of thought about internally that would sort of help deter people from trying to copy what the coordination game is doing.
Great question. I think we discussed this a bit recently while playing games. And quick shout out, we would like to play some games again this weekend if anyone's interested in joining us. It sounds like Halo is going to be the game of this weekend. Is that tonight, Dietz, or what day did we decide on that?
You know, I have in a few hours, 6 p.m. Eastern time, but I'm happy to make this a game weekend as well for folks that
Nice.
maybe can't make it then. If they want to pick a day, I'll be around. So yeah, we can work on that. But I want to distract from the question. I think this is important.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So anyway, I was gonna make a joke that I think this question's a lot easier to answer while not running around, getting attacked in a video game. But I also not to kind of sidestep the question a second time, but once we publicize all the details of the coordination game, this will be a much more productive discussion, because then everybody can kind of see the details, kind of read all of the content, immerse themselves, and then we can have a much more open discussion about this. But I think one of the most important things really is having user flow and market maker flow into the system, and also just having something that's, if somebody wanted to fork it, it would be incredibly complex and it would take them a significant amount of time. I think we've checked that box pretty well. Because as much as I've tried to simplify it. You can only simplify it so much. There's a lot of there's smart contracts. There's bots. You need a network of keeper bots, right? You need a network of basically bots that are extracting value, and then you need a network of market makers, liquidity providers, and then you also obviously need users. You need so a product that faces users that users can connect to, and then you need to attract users. And so you need all of this infrastructure for the back end that kind of provides the service, the coordination aspect of it. You need so once our documents are published, anyone could potentially copy it in theory. They wouldn't be able to copy the code. They'd have to go and rewrite all of the code, right? So it kind of seems like the formula for this really comes down to us protecting kind of the idea while it's under development. That way someone can't develop along next to us. And then once we launch, we now have a huge head start, because if someone wants to look at all of our stuff and throw 100 engineers at it, they can, but it's still going to take them a little while, and they're going to have to kind of engineer it, architect it, and then they're going to have to attract a network of bots. They're going to have to track network market makers, and then obviously attract users, right? And so I think really, like, what you want to do is you kind of want to capture the crown of being that best product that does that thing that you're trying to achieve, and then you want to maintain it. And maintaining it is oftentimes rather the harder part, right? Kind of like earlier I mentioned DEX is like you can launch a DEX and have it be top in volume 1 month, but can you maintain that for multiple months and multiple years? That's really hard to do. But the nice thing about this architecture is that it's kind of designed to do that, because you have so many participants involved, and if you don't have the most efficient bot, someone else can. And so it's really like once you're out and launched, people can start trying to copy it. But really, what we have is we have that early mover advantage, and then we need to maintain a network effect of keepers and a network effect of market makers and a network effect of users, and kind of carry that as momentum and keep feeding the fire and make sure that our economics are efficient and just excellent, right? They need to be fundamentally sound. And as long as we can kind of maintain that, we can keep feeding the momentum. And if we get wind of somebody doing something better than us, which people will try, and who knows, maybe they will. And what we want to do is we want to be able to adapt, right? If we see someone putting out a feature that's better than us, even if it's just one feature or it's many features that are better, then we would need to be able to adapt quickly. But hopefully, because we get that early mover advantage, hopefully we can be working on those next upgrades and those next features while they're still thinking about them. And we would obviously have an advantage because we're up and running, so we can implement them sooner. So it's really part of it is going to be on us to evolve and make sure that we take the next step. You don't want to be the best one at version 1 when someone else is making version 2. So we as a community and also just as our team too, need to make sure that we can evolve it and push it in the right direction. And if we see something is working well, we don't necessarily want to just be happy with well. We want to find a way to make it better, right? So if our economics are good, how can we make the economics great? And it's definitely going to take an entire team and an entire community to make sure we're doing that for the future going forward. Because what the point that you brought up is definitely something that we've been thinking about. And it's also one of the reasons why we haven't been sharing every detail of the Coordination Games development while we develop it, because if we did that, then some team of 100 engineers could potentially do it faster than our smaller team. So part of this growth in our vision is to help us scale so that we can kind of be one of those bigger teams, be one of those bigger communities. So but anyway, a great question. And do you have any additional questions, or do you want to kind of maybe poke this question in a slightly more specific direction?
Well, I was just going to sort of comment based on your answer, and then you can sort of reply after that. But was that the reasoning to sort of opt for a teal organization where we're sort of the DAO is able to be labile to whatever conditions that sort of the coordination game might need to, whatever adversity that sort of our coordination game would face, the DAO can sort of shape itself as best as possible and as a short amount of time to sort of defend ourselves from these sort of people that are trying to capture some of our market share. Was that sort of the reasoning behind a teal organization, or am I missing the mark there?
Yeah, I would say that teal fits that very well. Like teal is very agile and adaptive, and teal makes it very convenient to spin up a team, or to expand a team, or to deprecate a team, or have a team adapt. For example, there's the multi-chain team in there. That could mean so many things. Multi-chain team could start out as 1 and end up being 4. There's a lot of different ways that teal can adapt to that exact sort of scenario.
I'll probably have some more questions later, but right now, I my mind is blank.
Thanks, Peso.
Great
Hey,
question. Thank you.
Daniel, why don't you go on ahead? We're not getting any audio from you.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
There we go.
I don't.
Yep, loud and clear.
Discord, it always changes my settings and changes the things that I've got established. But what's up, guys? Thanks for your time. I was just curious, if it was appropriate to ask some questions about the coordination game. While we have Jay-Z in here, I understand there's things that probably can't be disclosed until the moment, but is that okay?
Yeah, fire away, and we'll see what we can do. And if anything that we can't discuss today will be discussed very soon.
Okay, cool. So I was really pleased to see, and I'm sure a lot of other people that are listening as well. First and foremost, what's up, everybody in the audience? A bunch of OGs here. I know we've all been together for a very long time. I hope you're as excited as I am for basically the entire reason for KeeperDAO's existence finally happening. It's been a really long road, and I'm extremely excited to see what these guys have cooked up. I was, I read the whole the post on Medium or wherever it was. I know it wasn't Medium, but about the teal organization and all that. I think it sounds fantastic just in terms of us being able to scale, operate efficiently. One of the biggest issues with DAOs, of course, is it just takes so fucking long to do everything. So if I'm understanding this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is going to allow us to operate with some level of decentralization, while also operating with some level of efficiency as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's definitely the idea.
So basically, I think a great example of this was our decision to purchase Convex. It was, the whole thing just had to be so public, and we had to be so slow about it. Whereas I feel like under the new structure, if that proposal had come later, or that was something that was discussed, and the people that we had kind of placed in these positions of power, could have decided upon that and executed it. And, we could have done that more efficiently under the new organizational structure. So I'm excited about that. But back to the coordination game. At the end of the article, there was a reference to something we've all been looking forward to for a very long period of time, and that is native staking for Rook tokens. That is the evolution of the Rook token. The Rook token, in some regards, accrues value now, but will there be direct value accrual to the Rook token through the staking mechanism? And if you can share this, and in what form will that value accrual present itself? Because, currently as we see it, of course, there's value accrual to the token through accumulation of assets to the treasury, which, for the time being are used as a deflationary measure. But when we stake these Rook tokens, are we going to be distributed non-inflationary incentives for doing so as a byproduct of the coordination game?
Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. I would love to go into more details. I don't think we should go into more details just yet. We're
Understand.
preparing some visuals, some graphics that kind of
Sure.
help everyone understand how the economics work, that give you a quick, like, if you look at this image, okay, you get the big picture, and then here's documents to dive into the details. But absolutely, the answers to your questions are yes.
And for anybody in the audience, that doesn't understand that, when I say non-inflationary incentives, that means that the KeeperDAO isn't printing more Rook to give you just because you're staking. It means that the value accrued, by the DAO, by the products, is driven to your staked Rook in some shape or form. So that's really, really exciting to hear. And then here's every developer's favorite question: when?
Soon TM, right?
Yeah.
So like today, all day, I was doing end-to-end tests, and it's really exciting because it's like every day I'm like, oh man, I should just throw this on mainnet and just start running it. But it's like then I think of one more little thing that needs to be done, whether it's DevOps or just mainnet prep or something. And then obviously we're still working on documentation. We're working on onboarding market makers and keepers. So there's still a lot of little loose ends to kind of tie up. But the great news is soon TM is getting sooner and sooner every time we say it. And I know that that's not the answer that everyone wants to hear, but it's one of those things to where you don't want to release it when it's not actually ready. And it would do more damage to release it when it's not actually ready, and it's much, much better to release it when it is actually ready, and it's going to be very soon.
So it's of course every developer's favorite question and every community's favorite answer. Can we, or do you feel confident that when you say soon, does that mean probably sometime in December, or is that more like a Q1 2022 type of thing, just so we can temper our expectations here?
Well, so maybe to not answer the question, but give you a pretty good hint. I'm not a huge fan of releasing a brand new product right before Christmas on Christmas Eve and then end up having to work all through Christmas. Because I've totally been there, done that before with some companies I've worked at in the past. At the same time, we may or may not be testing live on mainnet, through the holidays without anyone even knowing, and just not publicly saying it. So that's I'd say that's a pretty good answer.
I think that's a great answer. Is my understanding that means sometime early next year, which is, fantastic. Jay-Z, I know you don't get a lot of love. It's fantastic to see you up here, and I really do appreciate you engaging with the community more, doing these video game things. I'm going to try to show up for one. Also, I wanted to voice my public support of you as CTO. And Hazard as CEO. I think you both really deserve those roles, and if you are up to the task, and it does seem like you are, I think you're gonna fill those shoes fantastically. So thank you guys for your time.
Yeah, thanks. Cheers.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate the kind words.
Hey guys, we got more questions flowing in. We're gonna call Peso back up, and then I think P Chang also had raised their hand, so maybe they'll be up next after Peso.
I have two questions, one more useless than the other. So the first one is when merch, because that's been announced for since September, I think. And then the second one is a little bit interesting. I'm actually curious, sort of in retrospect, KeeperDAO has been a thing for about a year plus. If you could go back in time, what would you do differently in sort of launching KeeperDAO and tokenomic changes maybe, and how does that sort of shape what approaches you're going to take in the future for KeeperDAO?
Hey, let me quickly answer the Win merch. I appreciate you bringing that back up. So right now, merch, we've purchased it. It's been designed. It is in production. So we went with some really high quality labels that will that are the merch. I don't really know how to describe that properly, but we're really excited. Right now, it's looking like it will arrive at their distribution facility the week of Christmas. So between the 20th and the 24th, we will then start putting together some distribution of that. And obviously, we will be keeping the community in mind on that one. But I think you've got a bigger question around tokenomics and how things have gone over the last year. So I'll pass it over to JC.
Sure. And so remind me real quick. So your question was, with hindsight and knowledge that you've gained, what would you do differently? Was that it?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, well, it was sort of a multi-parter, I guess. It's been like a year plus. You sort of launched the token, and then I was sort of thinking maybe you should have just not launched a token and just announced this endeavor you were doing, and then launch a token, let's say in August this year or whatever, in conjunction with the launch of sort of hiding vaults or whatever. But just like maybe you don't like the tokenomics that you guys did for Rook, and you guys would rework. You guys, if you were to go back in time, you'd change this total supply to like 100 million, let's say, or something like that. I'm just sort of curious as to what you've learned throughout the year of working at KeeperDAO, and sort of what you would change if you could go back, and how that's going to shape what approaches you take going forward.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a great question. I think what's interesting about tokenomics are our initial plan for tokenomics was really designed to be short term on purpose. Because the coordination game obviously wasn't ready yet. And the economics of the coordination game didn't even make sense at that time yet. And so in a perfect world, like if I could go back in time and do anything, I would have come up with the coordination game, token economics sooner, because that would have saved a lot of time. It took a while to actually find the right recipe there. But really, like one interesting thing that I learned is, sometimes your short-term plans can become a long-term plan, just because if something like the coordination game is taking longer than you would like, you're kind of stuck in that short term. But then it's nice, kind of what we did is kind of pivot the economics and just kind of take them by the reins, rather than just kind of letting whatever short term we had play out. You kind of adjust it based on a need to need basis, and if something is still short term, you kind of acknowledge that, and then prepare for that long term transition, which is what the coordination game is. And so the coordination game will actually release essentially our long-term economic mechanism for the first time, because I would say that our economics even to date are so short-term that once the coordination game is out for some amount of time, we will probably even forget what those previous token economics were, because they're just so different, and so so much of a downgrade essentially. The new economics will be so much superior. So I think there's not really a huge lesson learned there, outside of I wish we could have kind of evolved and taken that next step and understood that new token economic structure sooner. But there's a lot of growing and evolving of our team that we've done over this amount of time. It's interesting because through the growth of our team, we've really met everyone from our community. Almost everyone we've hired was a community member to KeeperDAO, which has been awesome. Very few of our hires have been write a job description, post it out on the internet, someone applies, you interview. It's funny because that's traditional, but very few of our hires have been through that traditional process. While we do both, so far, I personally love hiring from the community, and just from whether it's some kind of a bounty or just some kind of a contract, and then all of a sudden, we work with this person, this person is amazing, and we hire them that way. I wouldn't necessarily say that's something that we've kind of learned, because we kind of some of our advisors and some of our Ren folks have kind of inspired that among us. So that was kind of brought to us from that culture, the earlier crypto culture. But yeah, anyway. I'd say that's my answer to that question. Maybe Hazard Deets, maybe if you guys have any hindsight lessons that you guys have learned along the way, feel free to share those as well.
Not so much hindsight, but really just a call to action. I started as a community member. I got here in February, and kept pouring more time. I think that out of all the people I talked to today, I probably was the most uneducated on this subject back then, and dove in headfirst and really dedicated my time to getting more educated in this space and figuring out how things operate. And so, if that's kind of where you're at, where you're like, oh, I don't even know how to get involved and I want to participate, just start learning, start asking questions. People here have been fantastic. You might get some sarcastic answers, but you'll get some real ones as well. But I will just want to say that if you know exactly what you're great at and you want to contribute, we are talking to people every day about this. And I will really want to highlight Pi Show and Pangolin, who have really stepped up and taken on that side as well. But yeah, if you want to contribute, DM me and I can connect you with the right people if it's not working directly with me on things. But the opportunities are there. With the bigger vision thing, I think that more formal opportunities will be coming. But we have grants and we have contract work and we have just ways for people to get involved. So if you are interested, don't hesitate. Reach out. Come hang with us.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I mean, I started in the community. I was just shitposting in the Discord, back in February, March. And, I don't know, something about KeeperDAO, it just, it changes people. Maybe it's I don't know if it's the waiting or the price action or what, but, the joke about, becoming a community member, it's a joke until it's not, right? And it's really nice when you, if you really do get involved. It's a great way to learn about the space and meet people and learn a lot of really advanced things. And I think, in the future, the more we kind of build up our presence and sort of start spanning out all the stuff we're doing, it's a lot of the things that we're doing and a lot of things we work in are things that are really hard to get any kind of knowledge about on the internet. Like, you can't look this stuff up on Wikipedia. There's not a lot of, other places to learn about it. And so kind of building that environment as well, that kind of participatory environment, I think it's really key to the DAO. And I think we have a really cool thing to learn where this could become the best place to learn about that. So again, sort of building these sort of magnets that draw in talent and people that we want to work with us. Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, I will say that one thing that I've learned and want to get much better at is, there are fantastic projects out there that are doing great things, but on top of that, many of them have built really good communities, and I know that that's something that people have given us feedback on, and really it's something that we will continue to pay great attention to. Is that we do value this community, the participation here, the participation in governance, and thinking of ideas of driving us forward. So for me, it's continuing to get into other communities and see what they're doing and start adapting that. And, I think one of these lessons is that I think I need to be moving a little bit faster on some of these things as, not be afraid to break some stuff. So, we'll see as we kind of start accelerating, our plans and start moving forward things. We will definitely be upping our efforts and engagements, with y'all over here. It looks like P. Chang seemed to have dropped off the call. Did we have? Oh wait, there was a great question here in the Discord. So given that the future, and this is for Hazard or JC, back to the vision document. The quote is, given the future structure is more like a company, what are the roles that the Rook tokens are going to play? Shares or utility tokens for using service? How can the new structure create a win-win for the dev org and the Rook token holders?
I mean, I think in a way, most forms of human organization could look like a company. Companies are just one way to put a bunch of people together and kind of orient them towards a goal. I guess I would say that the goal here is for us to look less like sort of a company, like a group of core contributors, sort of distant, mysterious, and sort of a DAO over here, and more like sort of one big entity that kind of each of us kind of playing a role and with sort of a co-equal responsibility for growing the network that we're all really kind of riding on. But in terms of what the token does, and I don't know of a good analogy actually. I mean, like this is part of the difference about DeFi is, I mean, you do have this sort of blending of functions for something like this. I mean, in reality, like tokens, whether they're providing utility or they're providing yield or they're providing governance power or they're providing, they're sort of a medium of exchange for fees or for, other services. They're just sort of a way to encode and transmit value and kind of, the key about them is that once you can do that, you can sort of decide how you direct that value in the way that allows an organization to grow and prosper, different than the ways that you can do that in a traditional company. And so it allows you to kind of broaden the idea about who is in the company. It allows you to broaden the idea about how you align incentives and how you kind of, algorithmically or mechanically design incentives and mechanisms. And so, I mean, the role that the Rook token plays, I doubt this is a satisfying answer, but in a way, it's all of the above. There's aspects of it that do many different things. And so to me, the simplest thing that I can think of about, like what does it do is that, to be in the DAO is to be a token holder, and to be a token holder is to be in the DAO. And if you're in the DAO, then owning that token means that you own either the success or the failure of the network or the public good that the DAO has formed around, right? So the token is, that's what the token represents. And so by growing that public good together, that value sort of grows. And part of how you do that might be that, part of that public good runs on those tokens. But it's hard to find an analogy, really. And I think that's why that's what makes sort of DeFi and crypto and Web3 so special. Like that's why we're here in some sense.
All right. Hey, I got another question from the community, from Rigetto, Spaghetto, Spunkgetto, whatever he's going by these days. Will having a more concretely defined leadership be beneficial in having the Rook token traded on larger centralized exchanges, specifically meaning getting listed? And if this was part of the requirements, that's an interesting question. I think that everything is a case by case basis for these bigger centralized listings. So you mentioned Coinbase, Binance. The thing about each of these exchanges is that they all have their own individual parameters, their own risk management systems, and their own way of analyzing and getting listings. So I will say that conversations with folks are happening, but the speed at which they pick people is out of our control.
I would say that no, that wasn't really a factor here. The key reason for this is providing accountability and sort of just clarity, because we know that we've heard many times that it's sort of unclear. The community finds it hard to understand sort of where the directions are coming from, and also it just it sort of provides just a simple structure and it sort of helps us interact with other protocols and stuff. And I mean, actually, many times, what exchanges and things like that are looking for is they're looking more at the DAO. They're looking more at governance and how vibrant that is, actually. So I would say it's almost the opposite in some senses. And so yeah, that wasn't really a consideration either way, though. Yeah.
All right. Do we have any other questions? I know we're actually even a little bit over time. This has been great. The questions, the thoughts, the comments. It's been really awesome, and appreciate you all being here today. So why don't we just make a last call for comments or questions, and we can adjourn. So does anyone have a last question for us for today? All right, Peso, I'm going to have you bring us home. What you got for us?
This is kind of a shitpost question, but what do you think the price is going to be for the Rook token in 3 months? Just open floor to any insider. I'm curious to see what insider price predictions would be.
Well, since my personal policy is to not talk about price about the Rook token at all. So I don't know if I don't know if any other team member is going to give you a better answer.
I'm happy to let you know that that one Rook will be in 3 months worth one Rook. So
frig off with
Tommy. Hey, welcome up to the stage. You got something for us? If you do, we can't hear you, Tommy.
He's probably finding his favorite price meme.
Maybe did you butt dial into the community call?
While Tommy's figuring out his mic buttons on his new laptop, let me just quickly revisit back to the merch thing. So merch, yeah, we're looking to have it at our, at the storage, end of the year. What we're doing is we're partnering with a distribution company that will provide you either with like a link or a promo code, and it will be airdrops. And so for us, this is something to keep our OGs, reward our OGs for sticking here, for positively contributing to our community. Obviously we want some of the team folks to have merch. So if they go to conferences and things like that, we're going to be representing. But we know that the OGs have been around and stuck with us and kept the faith. And so we'll definitely be looking to take care of them. Tommy, you figure out your microphone yet? Or are you just hanging up, getting some advertising? Looks like he muted himself. All right. Well, cool. This has been a really, really cool town hall. Everybody that stuck around with us and asked questions. I want to do just 2 quick housekeeping reminders. The first one around the governance workshop tomorrow at noon. We'll be talking CVX strategy. We'll talk some more of this reorg if anyone else needs to talk more or wants to provide comments on it on the forum. So tomorrow at noon Pacific, that's 8 UTC, the governance workshop. And then I think we'll be doing a larger expanded, kind of KeeperDAO game night for tonight. And then, for folks they're sticking around through the weekend, I'll post some times, and I'll be in voice chat for playing some video games with folks. And it doesn't just have to be Halo. I play Settlers of Catan. If any of you guys think you can beat a 19th nationally ranked qualifier finisher. Just kidding. But yeah, so, just again, big thank you to Jay-Z and Hazard for the time here today. Thanks for everybody for joining us. And yeah, more information's coming. So excited for you guys to be sticking around and stay tuned. Soon TM. All right. Thanks everybody. I'm going to close this one on out, and we'll be seeing you next time. This is What's the Deets signing off.